Hello and welcome to the Happy Head podcast. Now, I'm saying that really, really slowly because the past 5 times I've said that I've got my words mixed up. So I thought, I'll know what I'll do. I'll speak really slowly and I won't make a mistake. And it worked. Just sounds like an idiot, but there you go. Anyway, welcome one, welcome all. And today I've got the gorgeous Deborah McPhilemy with me all the way from South Africa. How are you doing, Deborah?
Hello, Paul. Welcome. Well, thank you very much, but I'm not in South Africa.
Oh, I
I'm
thought you
from South
were.
Africa. No,
Oh,
I'm in the UK at the moment, so I'm in West Sussex in Pagham. So, but I
no,
am
no,
originally.
no, no, no. You have to lie now. I've told people you're in South Africa, so you have to lie and say that you're in the south coast of South Africa, and that window in front of you is looking out onto the Atlantic Ocean or wherever it is. Okay, so we'll do that.
Oh, I
No,
wish we haven't been back for more than a year, but obviously we can't go back because of COVID. So they're still on the red country list. So yeah, who knows? Who knows when?
but it's so funny because the background that we were just talking about before we came live on air, and I was saying how amazing her background is. She's got this home office thing and the plants, and I'm just thinking South Africa, South Africa, South Africa, and you're not. You're in bloody England. It's not fair.
I know, but you know what? My lovely husband wanted, because I wasn't happy with the environment that I was working in, and obviously having grown up in South Africa, so he created an environment for me that makes me feel like I'm at home. So I'm glad that you think it looks like South African. Oh my gosh, did you hear that saw?
You saw it. I didn't hear it. Don't just carry on. We make noises in this
Okay,
podcast, so it's no problem.
because I could ask him to stop that.
No, 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 don't. If he's having fun, let him have fun. Do you hire him out by any chance?
Husband for hire
Your husband for hire because he's very good with his hands. He builds things. There's lots of people
is
that
brilliant.
need people to build things. So, I could start doing advertisements. And today on the Paul Wilson Show, we have Deborah's husband who likes to build things, birdhouse into swings and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, but we're not here to talk about your husband, or are we?
No,
No, we're here to talk about you, aren't we?
apparently.
So, tell us about Deborah then.
Oh gosh, there's so much to tell, but yeah, I mean, I moved here 10 years ago. I came here on holiday actually to surprise my daughter, who'd moved. She came out here on a gap year. Paul, I really need to tell him to stop making that noise because it's distracting me.
Oh,
Um,
I'm going to pause now and pretend you won't
yeah,
notice this. I've said pause 3 times, and then
sorry.
we come back and there'll be no more noise. So now, of course, you will not have noticed that I paused the video for a few seconds there. Deborah ran out, screamed at her husband, threw things at him. He's now
I did
lying on
not.
the floor, unconscious. The ambulance will be on the way shortly, and we'll carry on. So I can repeat myself. Tell us about Deborah. Deborah.
Yes, I kind of grew up in South Africa, as I said, and then about 10 years ago, my daughter had come out a few years before that on a gap year because of this arrangement between the UK and South Africa. And she ended up settling here and met her husband and lived, made this her permanent home. And I decided I'm going to take a gap year because my kids were both out of the house and I wasn't in a relationship or anything. So I came over here, surprised her for Christmas. I was going to be here for 3 months and then I was going to move on over to Thailand and teach English and kind of just go from wherever the wind blew me. But I was here for 10 days and met my husband, fell in love, and we went back to South Africa to get married, and I've been here ever since. So our 10-year anniversary is, in fact, at the end of this month. So that's kind of a little bit how I ended up being here and not in beautiful South Africa. But otherwise, yes, I work as a trainer, a personal development trainer. I specialize in emotional intelligence. I've written 11 books, and I just love it. I just absolutely love what I do.
11 books. I mean, you say that kind of like just off the cuff. Most of us, myself included, have a hard time writing one book. So how come you've written 11 books?
So the first book I wrote, which was called The Relationship Magnet, and I'd never wanted to be an author. It was never on my radar whatsoever. But my previous partner, I had quite a checkered background. I'd been in a series of abusive relationships. And it was only when I was introduced to emotional intelligence and mind work. So I'm very much into mind power, and the two work together. that I discovered that I'd had this weird pattern and this weird belief about myself and about men and relationships. I kept kind of getting back into these relationships over and over and over again, the same sort of relationships. And so when I met John, he said to me, "You need to write a book about how you managed to break this pattern, break this cycle," because he said in his experience, he'd met so many women who'd been in a similar situation. And I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, I guess I could write a book." English was my favorite subject at school, so I'd written lots of essays and won awards for it. It was something I absolutely loved. English. It was my favorite subject. So when he said write a book, and we had just moved to Cape Town, and we had this beautiful little log cabin like this, wooden walls, a little log cabin on a mountain overlooking Chapman's Peak and the ocean. But we kind of chose it specifically because he was the one that was pushing me. He said, "We are going to take this house. I can just see you. I can imagine you sitting here in this beautiful, inspiring environment writing books." And I went, "Okay." So he saw something in me that I didn't see. And I started writing my book, and then I was nearly finished with it. And I said, "You know what? I don't even know if I'm doing this right. I better go on a course." So I found a course that was running in Cape Town City Centre of writing a book, and I went, "Oh, okay. Well, actually, I seem to have kind of done a good job." And then from there, I just wanted to write more. So I wrote another one, which was the parenting one, um, parenting emotional intelligence in a nutshell, because this one was about breaking the pattern and how I had to change my mind. And then this one, I was like, you know what? If you don't want adults to end up in this kind of situation, you need to teach kids how not to grow up with that mindset and those thought patterns, because I discovered that mine had come from when I was 9 years old. So I wrote that book. But because I was working with parents and children, there weren't enough resources at the time to help kids with that. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to start writing books for children. So, so it's continued, and I will be writing. I've got another 20 books to write for children, and I've got another two grown up books to write as well that I've already started working on.
Another 20 books for kids.
Yeah.
Have you
So a
got
whole
them kind of outlined and in
yeah.
your mind and noted? Yeah.
Yeah, all got names, what they're going to be about. The stories, I haven't, because I've got a very unique way of writing the stories. I always say that I'm the universe's hands. It's not my stories, because it's quite bizarre what's happened when I write the children's books is that I'll go, right, I'm going to write a book about helping children to feel grateful for whatever's in their life. And I've got characters because it's all about bears and stuff. But I'll just sit down and I'll go, okay, and I'll wait, and I'll get the inspiration, and then I'll write it flat in 4 hours flat. And then I'll often read it back and go, did I just write that? It's almost like the story comes through me. It's not like I don't plot and plan it. I just know what the idea is that I want to get across. And then it just kind of happens.
And you're not a story author by any chance. You're teaching people this method of writing.
It's something I would love to do one day, but right now I'm busy building, teaching tutors. I'm training other people how to teach how to develop children's emotional intelligence. So that's what I'm very focused on at the moment. But once I've got enough tutors trained up, then I would love to do that, because I love writing. It's just so much fun.
No, it's not. It's a matter of opinion. I mean, I love writing when it's done and I've seen it and I've posted it, but the actual process of writing, I don't like it at all. It's
Really?
I find it a challenge, and this is something that I need to change my mindset about, so I can actually love writing and actually enjoy the process. And maybe I might actually end up writing a book in the end. Who knows? But I want
Yeah.
to ask you a question. You mentioned, because I've seen this as well, you mentioned that your former husband said that you need to break the pattern or teach people how to break the pattern. And you did break the pattern. And I've seen this time and time again with people that I've interviewed on this show and people that I know in kind of in real life, to use a cliche, that have been through not one, not two, but sometimes three, four, and five relationships with guys who are, well, a pain in the backside, basically, horrible, nasty guys, and they get stuck in this kind of pattern. So
Yeah.
tell me, Deborah, how did you manage? Well, first of all, how did you recognize that you were in a pattern that needed changing? And then how did you get to change that pattern?
I think it's almost like I remember the first time this phrase was used, and it was when Dr. Phil, I'm a big Oprah fan, I love Oprah Winfrey, and she used to have this guy on her show, Dr. Phil, who then got his own show. And he used to always say that when you broke up with somebody or a relationship afterwards, you should have a post mortem on it. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. And I didn't quite get it at the time, but it stuck in my head. And so what happened was I'd ended up in, I think it was the fifth, I thought it was the fourth, but I'd already forgotten about one, the fifth abusive relationship. And I just started thinking, I just suddenly became aware and I went, why does this keep happening to me over and over again? Why? It's the same type of man. They just, it's the same man, but just wearing a different kind of color pants, or something. Um, and I think there were inklings along the way because, like with the first relationship, it was very violent, very physically violent. So, but even that took me a little bit of time to wake up to because, growing up as a child, I got hidings. We all got hidings. And then of course your parent hits you and says, I'm doing this because I love you. So you kind of like, oh, so love hurts. Oh, that's the way it's meant to be. So it took me a while to get out of that relationship, or 5.5 years I was in it. But my mind was telling me that, well, that's what it's supposed to be. That's what relationships are like. Because if you don't know, my dad was never physical with my mom, but as a child, because my dad gave me hidings, that was my assumption. Oh, that's the way men treat women. That's what love is about. So, and so I got out of that relationship because I got fed up. I was sick and tired of my head being bashed against the wall because that was his favorite thing. Grab me by the hair and I got to the point of enough. I can't tolerate this anymore. But then the relationships after that, I remember my second relationship, third one actually, and I was in the doctor's room and there was like this checklist saying, does your partner control all the finances? Does he belittle you? Does he call you names? Does he make everything your fault? And then it said, if so, so it was that whole checklist. If so, you possibly in an abusive relationship. And I went, what? My relationship is abusive? This person is treating me so badly. So then I started realizing that there were different levels of abuse because there's financial abuse, emotional, mental, all of that stuff. And then after this fourth or fifth time where this guy grabbed me around the throat, I just something switched on and I went, this is happening again. Why is this happening again? So it was like a real light bulb moment. And then how I changed it, because by then I was already an emotional intelligence trainer and I was already had been introduced to how your emotions are the access to your mind. And the only way that you can figure out what's in your mind is through your emotions. So I just brought out all my books. I committed to this weekend and I said, that's it. My kids went to their friends for the weekend and I brought all my studying out, all my books. And I said, right, I've got to figure out how to change this because I'm the common denominator here. I'm the one that is attracting these people into my life. And I just started studying the mind in depth and then realizing that, and then doing that post mortem on all my relationships and kind of looking at all of them and going, the common, like the similarities between them, their behavior, and then looking at the way that I felt about relationships and how I felt about myself and started putting all the puzzle pieces together. And then realizing that I knew how to reprogram my mind. So then use the tools that I'd been taught when I was taught to be a trainer. And I turned it around and it worked so quickly because within 2 months I had met John, the guy who, told me to write the book. And it was almost like evidence of, wow, I've just attracted the most amazing human being into my life who cherished me, who nurtured me, who was just the most amazing beautiful human being. I'd never met anyone like that in my life, and all he wanted to do was me to succeed. And so it was so, yeah, and that's kind of how it all happened.
When you first meet these guys, is their behavior disguised deliberately, as in the abusive side of things? One thing I find hard to wrap my head around is that,
Yeah,
okay, anybody can make a mistake once, yeah,
yeah,
even twice, but to do three, four, or five, and I'm not pointing the finger here or anything, but
yeah,
my question is, do these guys that run abusive relationships have some kind of camouflage that we don't see when we
yeah.
first meet them?
Yeah, because if you think about it, like if you go into any relationship, right, most people put their best foot forward. We show our best, and especially when you're not authentic and you're not in touch with yourself and know who you are. Everybody, when you go meet the parents or anybody, it's like, oh, I'm on my best behavior. Not many people are comfortable enough in their own skin to just be themselves. So with abusive people, they are, and this is even something I wrote about in my book, where they are so engaging, so enticing, so how can I put it? They make you feel so special that you almost like sucked in a way. And when they have you, only then will it start. So for instance, I've been married 3 times. So, and I had an annulment. I've had 2 divorces. And that's another story why I got married. It had to do with the way I was brought up in religion. You're not intimate with somebody unless you're married to them and all of that stuff. Um, but the abuse only started after the ring was on the finger, never before.
Oh, so you got the handcuffs are on first, yeah?
That's it. And then it changes. So they don't do it intentionally either, because you must remember that your mind rules, your unconscious mind especially, rules more than 90% of you. So it's almost like, if you think about that whole thing about water attracts water. So a person like me who might have a broken way of thinking or doesn't love myself or has a certain belief about how things are meant to be, you are going to attract the people into your life that believe the same thing. So if you think men always abuse women, or men are always in control, or men whatever, you are going to attract those very people into your life. So it's a very unconscious process that happens, and you only become conscious of it when you start looking at the evidence and how your life is played out.
Yeah, kind of like the checklist you mentioned in the doctor's surgery.
Exactly. And so I've even got a checklist that says to women now, if he wants to get involved with you too quickly, if he because I found this common pattern with abusive partners is that they want to move so quickly, and you think it's a compliment. Oh, I can't live without you. You're so amazing. They're possessive, they're jealous, but you take it as a compliment. There's like a whole lot of things that they start doing that even that checklist, you go, well, no, this is too fast, too quick. Because if you're worth waiting, they will do things on your terms as well. It's not everything is about them. So there are a lot of signs to look out for if you're unsure, if you've ended up in a similar situation.
What are the signs? I mean, let's say there are people out here listening or watching now, and they may think, well, yeah, actually, I can see where you're coming from, Deborah. I've been in two relationships right now. How do women see the signs? What's some indicators?
I'm going to give you a few out of my book, because, and there's also lots of myths and facts around abusive relationships. We think people are only abusive maybe when they're drinking, or maybe it's because they're having a bad day, or maybe, so we kind of make up excuses for people who are abusive. But I remember saying to somebody once that, um, okay, if this is the case, if he's taking out his anger his frustration, his bad day on you, does he do it to his secretary at work? Does he do it to the nurse? So why is it okay for him to treat you that way, but he doesn't, because we think that it's us that creates it, or we just need to take it because, you get married for better or for worse, for sickness or in health. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on. So for instance, sorry, let me just find you some. Okay. So things that you can look out for are, for instance, trying to control you by being very bossy or demanding. So, in terms of, it can be in different ways. Well, you can only see your family when he says you can see your family. Like my one ex, I wasn't allowed to hug my children. I wasn't allowed to hug my brothers because he was so insecure. So it's about, you can only spend money when he says so. So if he wants to be in charge of absolutely everything, where you go, who you see, what you do, how you spend money, that is a huge. When they order for you, if a man orders your food for you, you go to a restaurant and you sit down, doesn't even, no, it's okay, I'll just get it, orders the wine for you, orders the food for it. Now a lot of women will go, oh, I like it when a man's in charge. Run for the hills. If somebody doesn't even ask you what you want to eat, it means they don't respect your choices and what you want. So simple little things like that that have been portrayed in these ridiculous fairy tales that are out there about knights in shining armor and being a princess and all of this stuff sets women up for relationships like this where it's not mutually respectful.
I'm smiling, and I shouldn't smile, but I'm smiling because I'm thinking of all the times I've been in a restaurant with a woman, and I would never ever have ordered their meal for them. I might have said, "Look, this is really nice. Have you tried this?" Yeah,
Yeah.
or "Do you fancy kind of steak or fish?" Those kind of. But it wouldn't even occur to me. So right, okay,
Yeah.
you're having. We're going to have this, and this. Now, interestingly, I've been asked to choose the meal for a person, which I thought was a bit
Yeah.
odd. Yeah, but I've never kind of gone right. Okay, this is what we're having. You're going to have this, and I'm having that, and that. That is so weird.
It is weird, and this is the thing, and this is why I say that so many stories, Mills and Boons, romantic movies, even like the 50 Shades of Grey, which is, to me, was the worst written book in the world. I mean, I read a few pages and I was like, I can't read this. It's just so badly written. But I did also watch the movie because I was like, what is this obsession, this fascination with this? He is a classic abuser. He's a misogynist. Everything is about him. They turned that into romance, Paul. They made it look like this romantic, heroic. No, that man was a control freak.
Mm.
Try to control everything about her. And I think this is what women need to break free from, in terms of going, stop thinking that a man needs to be your shining knight on, and making all these decisions for you, because it tells you something about him. If he thinks that his decisions are better than yours, if his choices are better than yours, then you are never going to be an equal relationship. Other signs are, for instance, when they say, I don't want you to work, I'll take care of you. Why?
Again, I'm laughing because that just would never. Yeah, you go to work. I'll stay at home. Yeah, fine. You go. Go and make $1 million. I'll sit by the pool all day. Again, yeah. So listen, I've got a question that's been on my mind for some time, Deborah. You might be able to help me with this. The word
Mm,
narcissist is being used an awful lot these days. There are
yeah.
kind of like narcissist coaches, if that's the right phrase. Are guys who have this kind of behavior, are they all narcissists, or are all narcissists running abusive relationships? Do you get what I'm saying?
I do, because in all honesty, I can say that, if I have to look back at three of my partners, I would say they were narcissists. But if I had to look at two of the others, they were more just really hurt and broken people who, um, did not have empathy, who were felt very powerless because of what had happened in their lives. But I won't say that all of them are narcissists. No.
Yeah, that was my thinking too, because I think again, some words become kind of buzzwords, don't they?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that word narcissist is now being kind of, well, from where I'm sitting, it's kind of being used to describe all relationships that kind of don't
Yeah.
work out, which is
No.
wrong. It's a wrong use of the word in that respect.
Yeah, and I think if you rather use the, rather say that somebody has narcissistic traits, because narcissism is something that is, I mean, it's hectic to change it. But if you think about narcissistic traits, all children are narcissistic, every single one of them. And it's not because it's not a bad thing, it's just it is what it is. Because if you think about children when they're growing up, everything is about them.
Mm.
And so when something goes wrong in a relationship, dad leaves, oh, it must be my fault. Mom leaves, oh, must be my fault. So they make everything about them. And then they grow up and then they become mature and then they realize that, well, but for years, you can then say that all children are narcissists, but they're not. It's just a narcissistic trait until you reach a state of maturity and you start developing your empathy and you start learning how to understand yourself and understand other people. That doesn't make them narcissists. It's just what they've labeled as narcissistic traits.
Yeah, because you get to a stage where you realize the world doesn't revolve around you. Because
Yeah,
from the minute you're born up until, I don't know, a certain age, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever it is, the world does circle around you pretty
yeah,
much until the dreaded second child comes along. And then you get this kind of feeling, well, hang on, I'm no longer, the world no longer circles around me anymore because there's another one.
exactly.
And the whole kind of focus is on the new baby, not me. So
Yeah,
yeah, I can see that. Yeah, you are right. It is a kind of like a narcissistic trait because it's like kids when they want something, they just don't stop. They are
yeah,
relentless. You got to
yeah.
kind of
Because
like
if you
put gaffer tape around their mouth, stop them talking. Oh, I didn't say that.
but think about it this way, and that is why teaching emotional intelligence is such a passion of mine, and just to kind of help people understand what emotional intelligence is because a lot of people go, oh, it's an idea, it's a concept. No, the way we teach emotional intelligence in our company is about human behavior. So it's everything about how the brain works, how the mind works, how the body works. Your emotions are just the language that teaches you about everything that's going on with you. So when we say emotional intelligence, it's about, so coming back to the children with the narcissistic traits, you then say to them, well, actually, this is how mommy feels, this is how daddy feels. And it teaches the parent as well to explain to the child that I'm having a bad day. It's not your fault. It's not about you. And I think that when people aren't emotionally mature, because you can still get 50-year-olds, 70-year-olds, 30-year-olds that are not emotionally mature because they've never been taught this, they can be seen as being narcissists, but it's just because they've never actually been taught to understand themselves and that life is not just about them. Because if you think about it, if you're not taught that, you're still behaving like the baby. I cry, yeah, he has a bottle or a boob. I'm wet, I cry, somebody changes your bum. You're hungry, you cry, somebody feeds you. So if you're not teaching them emotional maturity, that's what then ends up looking like a narcissistic person because they've never learned that, well, you're not still the baby that needs the bottle or the dummy or the nappy changing.
Yeah, I
Make
get
sense?
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There was a book that came out a long, well, what, 20 years ago now, and I tried reading it. I couldn't get past maybe the first chapter, I think. It's called Emotional Intelligence, but it's really kind of dense, very much like a scientific um,
Yeah.
publication. Really difficult to get through.
That's why I wrote my book because I remember when I was introduced to emotional intelligence, my boss had got back from America and he said to me, find me a trainer who can train emotional intelligence. And he handed me that book. And I was like, holy moly, I need a scientific degree to read this thing. And I'm all about simplifying things. And that is why I wrote my book to simplify it. This is what it is. You do that, then you do that, then you do that. And even like with our tutors that get trained, my whole little catchphrase is, we will teach you how to develop your emotional intelligence. And our process is as simple as paint by numbers.
That's good. I can
Remember
paint
those
by
paint by
numbers.
number things?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's come back, hasn't it, as a way to help people de-stress. They buy these adult coloring books,
Yeah,
and you have these like pictures of tigers, and it's like number one, number one, number one, number three, number 297, and people get yeah. It's a big thing now, isn't it? I forgot what it's called, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
So
so
what was I going to say? So, okay, so we've come out of these relationships. We've recognized the pattern. We've broken the pattern. Not we. You've broken the pattern. You meet this guy. You go live in the mountains by the seaside, overlooking everything, and you write this first book. Is that when you can decide to focus on helping kids primarily, or had that decision kind of happened beforehand?
that happened beforehand because when I became a trainer in 2003, by then I was already a counselor, a therapist, as they call them in America. And I was also, I'd gone to America and I'd become a health coach because I had lots of health issues and I wanted to, and that's kind of how there was then introduced to emotional intelligence. And it was all very serendipitous, as I like to say, because when I was introduced to emotional intelligence, I discovered that not only did it help me with my relationship issues, but it helped me with my health issues. I started understanding my body, what was going on, fed myself better, all of that stuff. But I opened up a practice. So I had this coaching and training practice. And so I used to see adults and children. And what I found fascinating was that the adults and the children all had the same problems. So I would see, for instance, an exec about his anger management, and what he was saying where that problem stemmed from was from when he was a child. And he'd never been taught how to manage that. So I was seeing these kids, so I was doing lots and lots of work in corporates. But because I then went, you know what? If we want to change the way adults grow up and to prevent them from having these issues that adults were having, then you need to teach children. So I then started focusing on children and parents, but I took it even a step further and I started teaching kids from the age of 4. Because if you think, um, in terms of children, so their emotional brain switches on at 4. So before that, they're only working on their survival brain. So your survival brain goes up until 4, your emotional brain switches on at 4, and then your rational brain only switches on when you're about 23, 24. So I said, well, you know what? If we want to create these skills that are going to imprint in a child's brain and they're going to grow up with these skills, we need to start at the age of 4. And that's kind of when my whole focus changed.
Okay, how long have you been working with kids from the age of 4, roughly
I
speaking?
have been doing this since 2003. So 18 years. I'm a veteran in this field.
No, so my question is, so there must be 27-year-olds, is that right?
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
no,
so
the question was, have you had feedback from kids that you've trained who were 4, who are now young adults, and how they kind of how their life is compared to somebody who's not had your training? That was my question, kind of.
I have. I've lost touch with them. But I had lots of feedback from the parents, feedback where kids even left the gangs because they felt so good about themselves and so empowered. I even interviewed my own kids the other day. My children are 32 and 35, and I said to them, I want to interview them, and they must be completely transparent about what it was like to have a mom who wasn't emotionally intelligent versus a mom who is emotionally intelligent. So we spoke about that. But yeah, I started working with kids from 4, but I also had kids from that were 9 years old. I had teenagers. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you've just made me really think because I'm now thinking of all those little faces and that made such an impact on me, and I haven't seen them in ages. So
Well, the reason I asked the question was I was just thinking for your 29th book would be like a really cool retrospective. Here's Paul, here's Michelle, here's Susan, here's James, who were students of mine from the age of 4 for a year, 2 years, yeah? And then you kind of like
uh,
look at how their life has altered through
unfolded, yeah,
and then you take sort of 4 other kids who haven't had that training and look at
yeah,
other like a case study parallel kind of thing. So that'd be fascinating to see
it
how
would
important
be
emotional
amazing.
intelligence is.
It would be amazing. And obviously, adults who've worked with me, I've seen how their lives have unfolded and moved on, and I'm still in touch with them. But yeah, I should try that, see if I can find them.
Oh, it's just an idea. It just kind of crops into my head when you're saying kind of
Yeah, it's a
specifically from the
great
age of
one.
4. Yeah, because that means that there are lots of young adults floating around now who had
Yeah,
your training, who've worked with you, had the privilege of working with you, and you've taught
yeah,
from such a young age. So, because when we're that young, we're sponges. We absorb so much information when we're that young,
everything.
so it kind of sticks with you as well.
Definitely, definitely. And I mean, even with my own grandchildren, the schools constantly comment on because they, like my oldest grandson, he's 9. And so I used to look after him a couple of days a week. And so I started um, testing a baby program on him. So I started teaching him EQ or emotional intelligence from 8 months old. He's now 9, and the schools are always commenting he's so empathetic, he's such a kind child, he's so understanding. He's so there's just people comment on it all the time of how different they are to the rest of the classroom because they've been raised with this.
Does it make them kind of more friendly, more outgoing? Do they have like a wider circle of friends compared to other kids in the class who kind of haven't had the benefit of being your grandchild?
I think it depends on the personality because obviously, some of them are introverted, some are extroverted. So Tyler, for instance, he's very much like me. He's a bit of an introvert, so he likes spending time by himself. He's got a nice handful of friends that he's very good friends with. But in the classroom, he's always the kindest child. He's always like, "Let me help you. Are you okay? How are you feeling today?" And he's even like that with the adults. He's the most beautifully mannered. He really cares about his classmates, so and his teacher. But like with Darian again, he's a totally outgoing social child, and he's got loads of friends, and he's excited. So yeah, so it definitely it depends on their personality with regards to, but it's the nature that comes out about how much compassion they have for other people.
Can people learn to be compassionate?
Yes, you definitely can. So the thing about emotional intelligence, you're never too old to learn it. The only people who cannot learn compassion are people who are, um, what do they call them?
Sociopaths.
Psychopaths, yeah. So a psychopath has got something missing
Hmm.
in their brain, but everybody else can be taught empathy and compassion without a doubt.
Yeah, the reason I asked that question is that you see a lot, well, I see a lot and read a lot about if only this person had more compassion, if only people were more compassionate. And I'm thinking, well, why aren't we more compassionate? Because if you, like you say, it's a learnable skill, well, then why the hell don't we start teaching people to be more compassionate? And then things would be a lot, easier.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's because, you've got to learn to, and this is what I find so amazing is that it's because you've got to learn the science of who you are. You've got to learn how the brain and the mind works because it's all about focusing and how you see things and your perception and how you interpret things. Because in the training that I do with adults, we've got specific exercises to almost like switch the empathy on, to switch the compassion on, where you're putting them in a scenario where they've got to place themselves in that position. And then suddenly everybody has these light bulb moments and they're like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about it that way. Oh my gosh, no one's ever asked me that question because the mind and the brain will make assumptions all the time. And it's based on your past experiences. So also if you think about it, your mind is there to protect you. It's to keep you
Mhm.
safe. So that is why people don't have compassion because the mind is so busy trying to keep you safe that it's not thinking about anybody else. But that is a part of your mind that you can switch on with the right tools and skills. So yeah, 100%.
Okay, so what are 3 things someone could do to kind of start working on their EQ? If they think that they need to kind of work, well, if they're thinking they need to do it, then they probably do need to do it. So what 3 things can you suggest people start with?
The very first thing that you need to do is to become self aware. So it's not about being self obsessed, it's not about vanity. but you need to start paying attention. And there's a really interesting activity, and we teach loads of activities, but this one is find out what it is about people that irritate you. So when you become self aware, and then you start realizing all the things that people irritate you about. And usually it's because you have exactly that same trait that you're not willing to change or pay attention to.
That's interesting because I had a conversation with someone, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, and I was about to say, this irritates me. I mean, actually, no, it doesn't anymore because they're just saying it for whatever reason. And there's about 3 or 4 times during the conversation when I'm about to say, that really winds me up or something along those lines. I had to stop myself and go, you know what? It doesn't anymore
No.
because they're just doing it because they're just doing it for whatever reason. Maybe
Yeah,
they're
it's not
having
about
a bad day
you.
or something. Yeah, exactly.
That's my other second thing I love to say to people is that it's not personal. If your kid is not listening to you, it's not because they're disrespecting you. It's not about you. You just haven't learned how to speak their language. You haven't learned how to get them to cooperate. You haven't learned to understand your child. It's not personal. Your child's behavior is not personal. This whole thing about like when children throw tantrums as well and stuff, they're expressing their emotions. They're frustrated. They don't understand what's going on. And then yet you hear people saying things like, oh my gosh, that was so embarrassing me. My child embarrassed me, or the child gets punished. They're just expressing their frustration and anger the same way when you walk off on a hill into a bush or get in your car and scream just to get the rage or the anger out of you. But children are being punished. So that's my second tip is that first of all is to become self-aware, check out what's irritating you about people because that's a trait within you that you need to pay attention to. Secondly, stop taking other people's behavior personally. It's not about you. It's always about them. Somebody else's bad behavior is not your fault.
Mm.
So that's a little bit different in terms of saying don't take it personally. So it's like this whole abuse thing is that when somebody treats you badly, you think, oh, I must be a bad person. It's my fault. There's something wrong with me. No, there's not. It's about them. So, and the third thing I'd say is that get literate. When you learn to speak English or French or Spanish or Afrikaans or whatever language, you get literate. You learn the words. You can't understand yourself if you and your emotions and everything you do, by the way, in your life, every single thing you do in life is based on your emotions. And if you want to understand why you're doing that, become literate. Find out what the words mean. What is the emotion that is associated with that? So become emotionally literate.
How do you become emotionally literate? When you say about fun, you mean actually getting out one of these things, you mean getting out a dictionary and start looking at the words? Is that what you mean?
Well, if you go into the internet, you will now get thousands of lists of emotions. So even in this book, the parenting book, we give people a list, right? And we say to them, print it out, stick it up on your fridge, and every day choose two new words. Look up their meanings. What does it mean? What does it feel like? And when you start recognizing the emotions in your body, your brain's very clever. If you don't know what that is, you can go down the list and go, am I feeling anxious or am I feeling fearful? Or am I feeling worried? What is it I'm feeling? And you go down the list, you find the word, your body almost has this, that's what it is. That's what I'm feeling because it recognizes the word and the emotion. So that's how you become emotionally literate, like you print out the words, learn to identify them. What do they mean?
I heard that. That's interesting. It's almost like you say, learning a new language. You have, the word
Yeah.
for apple, banana, beer, coffee, croissant, and you have the Spanish or the Afrikaans or the German word along the side. And you kind of, when you read into the fridge, you grab one, you go, it's a croissant or whatever, and you learn by, yeah,
French bread roll.
yeah, French bread roll, Danish pastry.
Exactly, and this is what if I can just add this last thing is to say to people, don't be scared of your emotions because it really is a language. It's a universal language that every human being is born with. It's in you, and you just need to learn to speak the language. So we've coined the phrase, we teach tickle, we teach EQ as a language. So our tutors are all tickle tutors, not TEFL tutors, they're tickle tutors because it's a language. Don't be afraid of it. Learn what they're trying to tell you because they're actually your friend. Become friends with your emotions because they're going to tell you when you are in danger, when you are unsafe, because they tie to your intuition. They're going to tell you when somebody's not right for you. They're going to tell you where you're off purpose with your life, whether you should buy a house or not, because it's all connected to your intuition. You are born with this ability, so learn to speak it and use it because it makes your life amazing.
Wow. Deborah, where can people reach out to you? Where's the best place to find you?
Everywhere. So you just put in my
Everywhere. Well,
name
you're
in
not. Hang on, stop. You just said everywhere. I'm looking in my apartment. But you're not. I can't see you. No. So that's a lie. It's a fib. You're not
everywhere
everywhere.
online.
All right, online. Okay, fine. Everywhere online. So Facebook,
Just
Instagram, LinkedIn. Yeah, the three
just
main ones.
Google my name and it's spelled because I know it doesn't always come up on these things. So Deborah spelled Deborah, and then my surname is Mick, M for Michael, Philemy. If you just put my name in Google, you'll find me on all the social media and on all the websites.
All the websites. You're on the BBC.
Well, I'm on a lot of, I mean, we've got a lot of websites attached to what we do,
I
or what
know,
I
I know, I know. I'm just pulling your leg. Um, so, listen,
do.
Deborah, it's been brilliant. Any final thoughts? Any final words before we bring this episode to a close?
My final thought would just be get to know yourself, be yourself. There's no one else like you. And when you learn to love, accept, and understand yourself, including your emotions, your life just becomes amazing. So just date yourself. And same thing if you have children, just get to know them the way you would your partner. And you have these wonderful connections. It creates a beautiful connection with your relationship. So that would be my final words.
Brilliant. Listen, Deborah, thank you so much for your time and thank you for watching or listening. And I'll see you again really soon. Bye now.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks very much.